Hi everyone. Thank you so much for submitting your questions for the Working Dog workshop. I so appreciate it. Before I get into those, I thought I would talk more about a warm up and cool down since I didn't really go over that too much in the original information. And if this doesn't cover it for you, just reach out. You can send me a message on the forums and I can answer it more specifically. So when we look at a warm up, and I always like everyone to prepare a warm up or warm up time at least 15 to 20 minutes before an event. So it could be your agility trial, it could be going to track with your dog, whatever it is. Let's say your lesson or your track or anything like that begins at 2 o'clock. Schedule in your phone that it's going to start at 1:30. So you'll give yourself that extra time, because too often, I get it, too often we get so crazy with our days, and I get it too, screeching to pick up my kids at the last minute or not preparing for my own warm up or anything like that. So always plan a half hour ahead of time. And there are going to be three components of a warm up. The first is going to be what I call the elimination or the take it easy walk. And this is when you're going to allow your dog to urinate or defecate. Of course, sometimes this could take a little bit longer. Your dog is definitely going to perform better if they're empty. So getting them, if it's an intact male, letting them urinate as much as possible, getting them to defecate, whatever they need to do. And this is pretty much, let them sniff. It's just that take it easy walk. And then you're going to move into your faster walk. During the faster walk or slow trot, the goal is going to be to build up the heart rate to start preparing the body for exercise. So you want to be moving at a fairly good clip. You want your dog to start mentally and physically getting ready. This component will be more physical than mental, but the body is being told it's going to work. And then the third component is going to be mimicking the activity the dog is about to perform. We know in warm-up we do not want to do any static or stationary stretching. So leaning over and bending and stretching our legs like we may have done in gym class years ago is not what we want to do. We want to get into a little bit more of dynamic activity. And if we think about what your dog is about to perform, so whether it's jumping, running, bite work, anything like that, we're going to try to mimic that. And lots of ways to do that. If the dog is going to be up, down, we can have them put their forelimbs up on an object and come down. They're not holding for a long period of time at all. It's just up and down. We can also have them go from this position to a sit, to a down, and have them work that way. Other things that we can do, figure eights and lateral movements are going to be great to engage that movement and get the dog starting to prepare in those ways. Practice jumps. The dog is, depending upon whatever you're doing with them, we want to do 50% of what they normally would. So if they're jumping 24 inches, have them just jump 12 inches to start. Running with frequent stops is a great way to prepare the dog's body. So you could run forward, stop, maybe 5 feet, stop, take a break. I'll have the dog go into a down and then repeat. So this going from a static to dynamic movements is really going to be applicable in most working and sporting things that we do. If the dog is involved in heavy duty tracking, search and rescue, this is going to maybe take about 5 to 10 minutes of your time. And again, you're going to mimic those surfaces that they're about to perform. And as I mentioned, think about what the dog is about to perform. All sorts of things. With a search and rescue, with any of the hiking, there's going to be a lot of up and down. So how can you work with that? How can you mimic that? Think about it and just break it down. The purpose of this step is not only to physically prepare the body, but we're going to mentally prepare the body for activity. With a cool down, we're going to go reverse here. So we are just going to go the opposite. Depending upon how much activity the dog has had, this cool down phase could be anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, could be a little bit longer. If your dog has been out doing SAR work, we want to spend some time cooling down, getting the blood flow decreased, also just starting to get the dog a little bit more relaxed. After this, you can start to engage them in more static stretching. So not, worrying about, you don't have to do dynamic, we'll go into more of a static component. So working with that. As we look at our questions, so if I was going to put together a weekly fitness program for a French ring dog that was training for competition, what would it look like? So we see a lot of French ring dogs, and typically I want to do 3 days of endurance type activity. So endurance activities is going to be anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, usually at this level longer. So maybe looking at 30 to 45 minutes. And it may be jogging, running, hiking, underwater treadmill. The dogs that work in the underwater treadmill are typically working about 30 minutes, which is equivalent to about an hour and a half. Then on the other, on 3 days, I want to focus a lot on core strength and plyometrics. So the core strength, all the exercises to work their core, to focus on that activity. Add in plyometrics with a 72-hour break. I'll have a workshop coming up on plyometrics up in July, but the plyometrics will help with jump training and also neuromuscular training. We should have a day of rest in there, so I like to always include that, of just a day where just gentle hikes, not doing too much. I mean, some sort of activity, but kind of letting the dog be, letting them kind of set the pace. And so 3 endurance, 3 strength and conditioning days, and then of course balancing out with the training there. Typically, the dogs are usually training 2 or 3 times a week, and just depending upon what they're doing in there. I'm curious about the endurance training for dogs who cover long distances. My wilderness SAR dog will cover 25 plus miles in a single operational period, and I want to make sure his training is setting him up for success. Can I apply some of the endurance principles that I use for myself, consistent weekly mileage with longer activities on the weekend? Does the speed matter? And so absolutely, since the dog is doing long distance, 25 miles in an operational period, we're going to train them like we're training for a marathon. We don't always want to get to that point of running the 26.2 miles. We may hit that once or twice, but most of the time it is consistent weekly mileage with some days of increase. So usually like every 3rd or 6th day, increasing the mileage a little bit. With speed, you can definitely add a little bit more speed in there and shorten the time. I also, with these SAR dogs, like to get in good core work at least 3 times a week to make sure their core is staying strong. And that could be 15 to 20 minutes 3 times a week, which will work great because we definitely want that endurance, but we want them moving along strong too. How do you assess and improve jaw strength and dental health for bite work? Such a good question here. So first, always looking at dental health. So I like to have my handlers work closely with the dog's mouth, making sure they can touch their teeth, get in there, feel around, be okay with their, just be familiar with not only touching the teeth, the canines, but the TMJ area, or the temporomandibular joint area. Can they open and close without pain? And just putting a little bit of pressure onto the TMJ area will help the dog, or help the handler rather, assess what's going on. Then I put peanut butter on the roof of the dog's mouth, and I ask them to open and close, which I usually don't have to ask them to. They usually do it very nicely. So having them move their mouth up and down, and then looking, are they moving too much on one side? Is there any disruption there? I'll then give them a hard cookie and watch how they chew. Are they chewing pretty evenly? If I have the opportunity to watch them chew on a bully stick or anything like that, that will give me a little bit of time to look at how they're doing with that. Also, just while they're grabbing on for bite work, do you notice that they're biting more heavily down on one part of the sleeve than the other? So if you can do it, to put a little bit of charcoal or a little bit of litmus onto the teeth and have them bite down on a white sleeve is great to work with, and to see if they're working like that. I also ask the handler to ask the dog to put their bite mark, bite the sleeve and have them extend up and then down, making sure they have no pain in full extension and then flexion looking down. In the video, the harness you use for bungee work is slipping, and you are absolutely right with this. So when doing this for home, I definitely recommend sled dog harnesses, and there are a couple websites here that have great ones. In the clinic, it's usually hard to, if I'm doing an activity for just 30 seconds, to get harnesses for everyone. So we use the Comfort Flex harnesses. But both of these sites have great harness suggestions, and the harnesses are light. They will fit very evenly, and you'll get more of an even pull, and they work fantastic. So this is about man trailing dogs, and this is becoming a popular sport here in Connecticut, and I love it. And the dogs definitely have to pull on the leash when they're working, and sometimes they have to go uphill and downhill. So with this, we definitely, with our warm-up, we want to include working on that up and down motion, just like gradually. The thing that concerns me the most is the coming down when they're pulling, because they're working so much of an eccentric strength. So working on that will be very important. And once they're with these activities too, if I can, to do a lot of cross training with up and downhill, and working, if I don't have the opportunity of being outside, using a treadmill with an incline and a decline works fantastic to work on this. And here's just a website about what is man trailing, and great sport. Like I said, it's becoming very popular, and these dogs are in great condition, and just making sure that they stay in that great condition. So working with their endurance, their core strength, and their flexibility. So thank you so much. And like I said, any other questions or anything like that, just drop a note in the forum.